Yes, we are transcending thought, not back to where we came from, but rising above thought. Now that state of rising above thought, where you can still use thought beautifully, powerfully, when it's needed, but you are no longer possessed by thought or consumed by thought. Thought, useless thinking, burning up a lot of your life energy. Not going anywhere, just going around, just like the car is in neutral, you're pushing down the accelerator, not going anywhere, just boom, 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 for hours and hours and hours. So stepping beyond thought into that clarity and alertness. That is both gentle and fierce. That has two aspects seemingly contradictory. It's very gentle, that energy field of alert presence, but also has a fierceness. It needs to have a fierceness because it needs to cut through thought. That substance, and thought is heavy, dense. So to cut through that density of thought, coupled with the density of the emotional field that goes with the thoughts, you have the two layers. The density of thought, the density of that emotional field, pain body, and they cling together as two layers of density. And then comes presence, and in this case here it comes from two directions. That's why it's possible for this to happen. From within you, that dimension of presence emerges, pushes forward. But it might not have enough, in the absence of extreme and agonizing suffering that cracks it open from above. It may not have enough power to cut through the density. So all you feel then is an extreme restlessness, something wanting to happen, and there may be searching, and something wants to almost be born here, but it can't be born. It's not, because the shell is not cracking. But here it's being also pierced from here, from the energy field that is here in this room, that comes through this teaching, which is more than the words. So that the presence is cutting through from within you and from without. So it's just the way they built the Channel Tunnel, from two ways. They started in England and in France digging. And finally they met in the middle, and they had cut through these layers of seemingly impenetrable rock. So, if it were not already happening from within you, it would be meaningless and it wouldn't work for you to be here. So the layer of thought that stream is being cut through, and when you leave here, there will, we trust, be enough presence in you so that it can happen without the external help, although occasionally it's still helpful to listen, to be reminded, to open a book and read just a few lines that have come out of presence. That's helpful, as long as you need it. But there is enough presence in you now so that you can use it as a sword. And I'm now talking about the active side of presence, because presence is both fierce and gentle. It has an active aspect and a passive aspect. It depends from what perspective you look on it. So when we say that allow this moment to be, in that there is an arising. There's surrender and presence go together. Surrender to what is one side of presence, and that looks passive. But that is not the full picture. You cannot surrender to what is, it would not work, if there were not also a fierce aspect to presence, an active, very active aspect to presence. So on the one hand, it's very gentle and allowing, but it is also, it acts like a sword that cuts through accumulations, collective, of the collective human mind and pain body. So there comes this attention. When the Zen master raises his finger and looks at you, there's a fierce look on his face. We see it in old drawings of Zen masters. You wouldn't want to meet them in a dark street. The eyes come bulging out of their heads. So they represent the fierce aspect of presence. Underneath it, if you look closely, if the artist who drew this drawing of the Zen master was in tune with the Zen master's inner state, if you look closely, you will find also hidden there underneath the fierceness, the gentle aspect of presence. It's hidden. You can see, if you look into the eyes, they both are present there. So, allowing what is to be needs to come together with a sword-like aspect, almost what seems, the mind would say, irreconcilable, but they're not irreconcilable, perhaps only from the point of view of the mind. So, how does that work? This moment, something arises. This moment takes form as an event that appears in front of you, a person or an event. Now, allowing this moment to be as it is in whatever form it arises requires you to face fully what is, not opposing, facing in an open way, not facing in a as if you were fighting a battle against something. You face it in an open way, like this, to have your arms extended like this. So this is the gentle, and yet at the same time you look it straight in the eye, so to speak, whatever it is. This is the gentle, the receptive. And the attention is the fierce. So you welcome what is, but there's a fierce attention that flows through you onto whatever it is that's happening. Not fighting anything, just it's fierce alertness. And that cuts through the old reactions that are all accumulations in the reactive mind. They can then not operate anymore. And intelligence itself, which is attention. Attention is great intelligence, but very different from the accumulated so-called intelligence of the human mind. That is a limited aspect of the greater intelligence. a limited form that this greater intelligence can take, which is fine too. It's only not fine anymore if that is all you know and all you think you are. If you are good at solving IQ tests, well, that is an aspect of the limited intelligence, and that's fine if you're good at that. If you get your identity from that, it becomes problematic. I'm a member of, I think it's in England, they have Mensa, which is all the people who have very high IQs can become members of that. And some people let that flow into a conversation just casually. Now, if I'm offending one or two people here, I'm sorry. That is beautiful. Why not? If you can use your mind in such a way, it's a beautiful thing to do. If that becomes an important part of your sense of self, then you get trapped in an illusory identity, and you probably have a few more things to add to it. And that is part of identifying with the realm of content. I don't qualify to become a member of Mensa, unfortunately. The mind doesn't work in that way anymore. I think it never did. I could never solve mathematical problems, and I always admired people who could. I can't even see where the problem is. When I was at school, after the age of 13, I stopped going to school. I couldn't stand it anymore. But I still they had all these problems that you had to solve. I couldn't even, my mind would go blank after reading the first few lines. A man has 5 sacks of potatoes, and then he takes 2 away and takes half of that content out and puts it into another sack. How much is left? And that's okay for a problem to solve if there actually is a man. So we are conditioned to create problems for ourselves. That lies in the conditioning of the mind. And so often, when you think you have a problem, really, your mind is creating a problem for yourself. If it isn't happening at this moment, if there's no action you can take right now, and so comes the fierce aspect of presence. Oh, I've got so much on my mind, so much, what is the expression, so much on my plate. God. And so you need to remember the sort of presence. What's the problem at this moment? Can't find any. Yeah, but it's not this norm. But tomorrow, when I get there, what's going to happen? When this or that, when the moment comes, there's more than enough power in you to face it and to take right action when right action is called for, because you will face the challenge when it's true in that state of welcoming attention and look it straight in the face. And in that moment there is no thought. When you face a challenge, truly, there is no thought. There is just the looking. And it may be an actual looking, or metaphorically speaking, you're looking at the situation, the totality of what has arisen at this moment, what needs to be solved, responded to, dealt with at this moment. And you look. And in that looking, that is fierce and gentle at the same time, there is an activation of a greater intelligence than what you have learned, whatever you may have learned. Now, what you have learned may eventually come into play also, because eventually, perhaps, you will take action, part of which is to do with certain things that you have learned to do. Or you will speak words, which is to do with using language that you learned in the past. But that will be only an instrument of it will be inspired use of whatever form comes into play when you deal with it. But there's the moment of alert, aware presence in which there's no thought and there's just the looking. And any master does that in any field, has the ability to look for a moment and then respond out of that. The greater intelligence responds out of that. You just, in the same way that great sportsmen play their sports, no tennis player, great tennis player thinks, well, I think the ball is going to come there next, so I'll better move to the left now. Now I've got to get ready for the other side to jump to there. Now I have to 2 meters forward quickly. It would be impossible. Through conceptual thinking in the mind, there is no thought. And if thought interferes, they're not playing well today. And they all have days when they're not playing well. And very great sportsmen actually enjoy tremendously the flow of energy and realize that they are not doing it. But there's the ability to just be there. So this is the non-conceptual intelligence in you, the non-conditioned, unconditioned intelligence in you that becomes activated. And that deals with problems beautifully, true problems, or rather true challenges, because there are no problems. Problem arises when you are either imagining something happening to you now, it is not happening, you're somewhere else, it's not happening now. You're dwelling mentally on some possible situation, because even if you had an illness that is very problematic, You don't know the outcome. Will I survive or will I not survive? Of course, eventually, nobody here survives as the form. How much longer will I survive? Is that now to some people that becomes a dreadful burden to know that you have a condition that you may not survive, which of course is everybody is suffering from it in a wider sense. It's an incurable disease called mortality. The diagnosis is fatal. Mortality apparently always ends in death. So some people who see their lifespan, they don't know how much future they have, and it can become an enormous problem, because you think, I have not fully lived my life. If you're 90 and the doctor tells you you only have 2 years, maybe that's not so bad. But even then, some people think, oh no, I need a bit more time. But if you are 30, it seems more problematic. Or if you're 20 and the doctor says you may not have much time left, and then comes panic, and then comes a sense of unfulfillment, in some sense, I haven't even started yet. I haven't fulfilled what I've come here to do. All the things that I potentially could do, I won't be able to do them. You become a huge problem suddenly. Enormous suffering arises. But in some cases it happens that the uncertainty about how much future you have, or seeing that you have very little future left, future is removed from you, forces you more deeply into the present moment. So I know some people who have a so-called serious so-called life-threatening illness. Of course, life is eternal, but it threatens the form that you are. A so-called life-threatening illness, and they have become enormously present because they have no future to escape to anymore. It's just always, they live totally in the now. The future is so uncertain, there may be nothing there, so there's no point in even projecting anything. There's just... And some have become spiritual teachers and become transparent to this enormous current of awareness that goes through them. And they smile, and they... Occasionally waves of fear may still come even to them. And then it passes, and they're back in presence. And they realize, no matter what they could have achieved in and through time, because that has its place, as long as you have what looks like time, why not do things in time? Of course, you learn a skill, you learn a language, you learn to do this or that, you travel here or there, see new places, have new experiences, all these things time is good for. Well, nothing helps you if you're always in the future, no matter what you experience. But so that is where usually you seek fulfillment of your life, by adding more things that only time can give you, because more implies more time. I need to add more to me to be fully myself. On the level of form, that is true. If you are 20, you haven't started living as such, you haven't learned anything. Perhaps you're just learning to become a pianist or a great computer expert or whatever, and you suddenly get interrupted. On that level, it seems your life has come to nothing. But your life is not your life. There isn't even you and life. There's only life of which you are a temporary expression. There's only the one consciousness of which you are a temporary expression. And if that flowers when you are 20, and the true flowering is not the achievement of this or that, sometimes a flowering happens indirectly through an achievement, which doesn't help the person either if they still identify with it as a formal achievement. But the true flowering is the arising of presence in you, when you become transparent. And that can happen at any age, and it doesn't matter where you are in your life situation. It doesn't matter whether, because there are some people here who have succeeded in the world, and others who in the eyes of the world have not succeeded. There are others here who have succeeded years ago and then failed. And others who have failed miserably up to this point, and in a year from now they'll be rich and famous. It all happens. I was a failure in the eyes of the world 10 years ago, 8 years ago. Now the world thinks I'm a success. Completely meaningless. Completely meaningless. But it doesn't matter where you are, at what life situation you're in at the present time. The ultimate purpose of your existence is for this form to manifest that which is beyond manifestation, to become an opening for the unconditioned, for the stillness, the awareness, that energy stream, that frequency, so to speak. I believe it was Ramana Maharshi who sometimes used the expression, a current of awareness that flows through you, that is non-conceptual intelligence. And the intelligence, even that's a limitation, it's more than that. It's love too. The first time I'm using this word here, because some words you have to be careful with. Words like God, words like love. Because the reality to which these words point is so far greater than the word that it's usually misleading to even say it. But now I've said it. What flows through you when we call it intelligence or great power that deals with